Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
The father of personal development, Jim Rohn, said it best. You are the average of the 5 people you spend your most time with. And so I've created a mastermind community called the Lion's Den around this idea that if you are surrounded by high-performing people and you have consistent education and training, then you will succeed in life and as a man. Check out kfmlion.com to learn how the Lion's Den can take your life, relationships, and business to the next level. Again, that's kfmlion.com. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Dr. Dain Heer, a world-renowned personal development educator, an international speaker, and author of Being You, Changing the World. Dr. Dain Heer, happy to have you here.
Hey, Andrew.
I guess that
happy to be here.
I guess that sounded weird, but we'll move past this. So let's dive in now with a favorite success quote of yours, something that you've lived by that's helped you on your journey, and then share with the audience what that means to you.
The one that I would always give people is never give up, never give in, and never quit. And for me, it's like, we all have challenges in life. We live in this world, and people give us the idea that if you have challenges, there's something wrong, or you're doing something wrong. And it's like, no, not at all. Those are there as a result of the points of view that you have, but they're there to show you what strength you have and what capacity you have that otherwise you'd never get a chance to acknowledge and live from.
So sometimes the challenges are showing us, well, hey, this is an opportunity in front of you, that it's an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to learn, and it's only going to benefit you.
Absolutely. I would say always. I haven't ever seen it be anything other than that. And at the very least, it's a chance to course correct, because it lets you know, hey, you know what? You're doing something to yourself. You've got some way of living in the world that's actually not working for you. Here it is. Are you going to change it now?
I like that. I think that's a good quote to kind of kickstart the show with. And before we dive into some of the lessons that you've learned on your journey, let's learn more about you and how you got started with what you do, from world-renowned personal development educator, international speaker, and an author. And I've been trying to get a hold of you, and you're flying all around the world, so it's good to have you here. Share with us your story of how you got started with what you do.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say that about me, because I sit there and I go, wow, man, if you would have said this 15 years ago, that anybody would be saying that about me, I would have just laughed in your face, I'd be like, are you serious? Who are you talking about,
All right.
And so it's this interesting thing. 15 years ago, I was a chiropractor living in Santa Barbara, and was starting my second practice there. And from the outside, it looked like I had the perfect life. I mean, I had this beautiful girl that was my girlfriend, and we were on this path to marriage, and I had this practice, and I was up and coming, and things were starting to sort of try to take off, except they kept fizzling. But what happened was, like, for me, I got so tired of waking up unhappy and feeling like life was a struggle. I knew there was more, and I had done every darn self-help thing I could find to try to create it, and none of it worked. Finally, I got to a point where I said, here's the deal. Universe, you got 6 months. Either my life really changes or I'm out of here. I don't need to be living a life that's basically suffering everywhere I look and not really creating what I know is possible. And so I make this demand, and I see an ad in a paper, in the independent paper in Santa Barbara, a week later, that says, access, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. And I was like, are you kidding? Life is pain, suffering, and gory. And I threw the paper away. Comes out the following week, and I learned long before that if you love something or hate it, there's something there for you. And so I called the girl. I had one session of something called Access Consciousness. And within about an hour and 15 minutes, I left the office looking up and going, wow, has it always been this beautiful outside? And I hadn't seen beauty in anything for almost 3 years. And I was like, you know what? If life can be this way, I want to be here. And I'd done a lot of things over the course of my life and sort of my personal growth journey, if you will, that gave me a sense of space or possibility, but always before the universe caved in on my head. It didn't happen this time because the girl gave me tools to use to change it when it occurred. And so here I am 15 years later, not only sharing those tools, but helping create brand new tools for people to use and sharing them with people around the world.
Wow, so much in such a short amount of time. What would you say was the catalyst or the aha moment that led you to go down this path?
Truly, it was when I had this first session of this access consciousness work, and it was something called the bars. And it literally, after this session, I literally went, wow. For the last 3 years, I've been living, because what it gave me was a sense of space that I didn't have. Because if you've ever been around somebody who feels like, you know, they're not living their purpose, they're not fulfilling what they know, they get this sense of contraction around them. And I had that. And what this gave me was this sense of space and this sense of sort of like, you know what, everything is okay. And I got up off the table going, wow, everything is okay. Not only that, but everything always has been and everything always will be. And it was like, okay, if this can feel this way to be alive, then I'm in, man. I'm ready. Let's do this thing, you know? And what I did was when I made that demand, when I said, look, universe, you got 6 months. Either my life really changes this time or I'm out of here. What was underlying that was, if you do show me something that actually works to change people's lives and changes mine, I will do everything I can to share it with everybody. That was sort of my promise. It's like, look, if you do change this, and the universe fulfilled on its promise, now it was time for me to fulfill mine.
You said feel this way to be alive. What does it mean to be alive? Like, and truly living?
Well, for me, it's like waking up with a sense of possibility, a sense of joy, and a sense of gratitude, and also the awareness that you can change anything. It's like there was a study done by an institute here in Australia called the Black Dog Institute, and they said that depression is going to be the major health crisis in developed and undeveloped countries by 2030. And I'm looking at that going, I get that. I mean, I was living that. And so one of the things that occurs for people who are not fulfilled or who don't have that is they don't have a sense that they can change things. And I think that's essential to a sense of fulfillment and what I call being alive, is knowing that you can change what isn't working into something greater.
And yeah, I get that. What would be the first step to creating that type of change in life?
Well, first thing to recognize is most of us have been taught to come to conclusion and judgment about everything. Yeah. And for every judgment and every conclusion you have, nothing that doesn't match that can come into your world. So when you decide, for example, oh, it's going to be really tough to change this, or wow, I'll be poor for the rest of my life, or I'll never be as successful as, you know, some business person or somebody you see out there, that's what you start creating. So the first thing you want to do to undo that is recognize that you've been taught to do that, and you've been trying to get the right judgments and the right conclusions and do what's right. And the way to come out of that is to start by asking questions. See, a question always empowers. An answer disempowers. So when you ask a question, what happens is it's like there's these doorways of space and possibilities that open up all around you that you couldn't see before. So a real simple question can be something like, how does it get any better than this? And I mean, it's a real simple question, but if you ask it whenever anything good or anything bad happens, what it does is you start to look for the better that can come out of something bad, and also something good, which means when something good shows up, it can get even greater. But if you don't ask that question, you're stuck with the idea that it's bad and wrong, or the idea that, wow, this is cool, but this is all I can have. That's just one really simple tool out of about 8,000 that can start this process to open things up to greater.
Got it. That's a huge difference in just reality. And I'm curious to know, what was it like in your reality of the world, let's say 15 years ago, when I kind of gave that intro and you're like, I wouldn't even believe you. And to what is your reality today?
totally different, as I guess you could imagine. But I mean, 15 years ago, here I was. I mean, I was a guy, I was Dain.
Right.
It was like,
really,
I was Dr. Dain because I had, gone through my chiropractic training and actually succeeded and, became a doctor and all that. But there I was trying to start a practice in a new place and in this tiny little office, because that was all I could sort of afford with ease at the time in Santa Barbara. And so I was a guy trying to make his life work and just, from my point of view, failing miserably. Other people might have, said, no, you're succeeding. But for me, it was failing miserably because I didn't have the one thing that I wanted, which was happiness and a sense of peace and joy. And so there I was. And so that was that lens of being one person who, at the same time, I'm one of these seekers. And I think your podcast appeals to the seekers of the world, the guys out there that are looking and going, hey, I know there's something different that's possible.
Right.
And that is definitely me. It's like I always knew there was something different possible, and I always wanted a different world. I mean, even as a little kid. And it sounds so funny to even think of that given where I was 15 years ago, because I couldn't even create a difference in my, in my bank account and in my emotional life. And so, but at the same time, I wanted a different world. So what's happened over the last 15 years is initially I started working with the founder of Access, and we did sessions together. And then at one point we realized there was this amazing contribution that we were to each other. So at one point I became his business partner. And so we started developing new ways to implement this. And the thing about it is, I think there's this thing that people don't understand, and they don't realize that great success in whatever way it shows up is created one day at a time and one step at a time and one choice at a time. And we think, oh, you know what? I want to be Richard Branson, so I need to try to be where he is right now. Yeah, but where did he start? He started as Richard, and created what he had one choice at a time. And that's what I would like people to recognize, is that's how this gets created. So we fast forward, as you asked, 15 years later, the lens of life is looking at it going, man, there truly are infinite possibilities available. I mean, I've been having this particular conversation about possibilities for the last 15 years. And for the last, let's say, 8 years in media would go, yeah, but tell me a little more about what you're wearing, And I'm like, oh, I want to show you how to change your life, And they're like, yeah, but what label are you wearing while you're changing people's lives, And I'm going, that's not what I want to talk about. And just within the last year, a lot of even mainstream media outlets are listening to some of the things that I'm saying, hey, I'd like to talk about this. And they're going, we would like to hear about that. And I'm like, really? And so it's an indication from my point of view of the change that we are all creating in the world. And if I could say, it's like, for those of you guys out there that know that there's something different you'd like to be in the way that we can relate to each other, in the way that we can create success without, having to climb over people's heads and step on their heads to get there, in the way that we can create perhaps even a sustainable living planet. It's like, if you know that's possible, keep heading in that direction. Don't give that up. The world, if you haven't noticed, is changing around us to allow for those possibilities. And the other thing is, guys, one of the greatest gifts you have is the kindness that you are to people. Don't let that die. Don't let that be killed. And don't let anybody tell you that because you're a man that you don't have this kindness and you don't have this desire for more. You absolutely do, and you have the capacity to create it.
Wow. Yeah. That's a complete change in reality right there.
Yeah.
That's a reality mindset shift right there. So let's say you're talking to someone and you can just tell they're in that state that you were in 15 years ago. Let's say kind of the autopilot type of zombie mode way of living. What do you do with this person? Let's say if they're a client, how do you snap them out of and bring them back to reality?
Well, what I do is there are lots of things. I said 1 to 11 of 8,000 about that particular question.
Right.
But the first thing is I would speak to them about where they are right now, but also talk to them about what they knew was possible before that they've given up on. and get them to undo where they gave up on believing that their dreams were possible to create and achieve. And so one of the things that is one of the other tools that I use with people that's really dynamic is the recognition that 98% of our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our judgments, our insecurities, all the crap that goes through our head on a daily basis that's crap, 98% of it isn't ours. It literally belongs to other people. We literally pick it up like a big psychic radio receiver. And 98%, from what I've seen, from 98% of the people that are not fulfilled, that are trying to head in some direction, it's because they bought that idea that that's where they were supposed to head from somebody else when they were younger, and they're trying to live somebody else's life, live somebody else's dream. So two things then, two takeaways here, because they're sort of slightly different but similar. One is right now, it's like if you have a lot of thoughts in your head, if you have insecurities in your head, if you have things that are like judgments or heaviness, what you want to do is you want to ask, who does this belong to? And if it lightens up at all, it's not yours. Return it to wherever it came from. This is one of the things I used to heal myself of depression 15 years ago. Every time I was like, I'm so depressed, I go, who does that belong to? And 99% of the time it would lighten up because I was just picking it up from somebody thinking about me or somebody out in the world. And so if you'll ask, who does this belong to? And if you'll do it for 3 days to every thought, feeling, and emotion you have, at the end of 3 days, you walk around like you're in a walking, talking meditation. And you've broken the machine that makes you think that everything you perceive is yours. So I use that to get people to look at, hey, this thing that you're doing, this thing you've got going on, this thing that you're trying to head in the direction of, is it actually your direction? Or did you actually give up on the direction of your dreams at some point? And if you did, can we change that now so that you can start doing what's true for you? And that's where the lightness and the joy in life comes in.
Wow. With this same guy, let's say he's excited, he wants to take this advice and make it happen, and so he goes out and does something with it, and then a couple weeks go by and he starts to have this negative self-talk that really is just bringing him down and kind of falls back into that victim mentality. So I don't know, let's say there was round 2, second session, like right. He's back, he's like, this is this new challenge I got. How do you help guys get out of that negative self-talk, that victim mentality?
Okay, so what I would do with the negative self-talk, first thing I'd be like, dude, who does that belong to? Is it actually yours? Or are you picking it up from people around you? And literally, and I do this when I work with people. I was going to say in my office, but I don't work out of my office anymore. I work all around the world. The world is my office now. But when I work with people, that's exactly what I do. And literally 98% of the time, it's not theirs. This negative self-talk that we have all lived with is literally the stuff that we picked up from other people 98% of the time. So I'd go, hey, remember that who does this belong to thing? And the guy would go, and I've had exactly the scenario you're talking about happen. And I'd go, remember the who does this belong to thing? And he'd go, yeah. I'm like, did you ask it about this? No, I thought this one was real. I thought this one was mine. I'm like, cool, so let's ask it together. Who does that belong to? And they start smiling and go, oh my God, I was buying somebody else's point of view. I'm like, yeah, so whose point of view? Let me ask you a question. And, I had this recently with a guy that I was working with just a few days ago. And I said, so let me ask you a question. You're in relationship and you have this, particular relationship with this lady and with your family, right? He said, yeah. I said, do any of them have a vested point of view that they don't want you to succeed? And he looked at me and his mouth dropped open and he went, oh my God, my girlfriend doesn't want me to succeed. And I went, ooh, kind of harsh, huh? And he's like, yeah.
Wow.
He's like, what is that about? And I went, well, she's got a particular relationship with you now, right? And she's the one in charge, right? And he went, yeah. I said, well, is she comfortable changing that relationship to one where you're actually 50-50 with her instead of her at 51% and you at 49%? And he went, oh, no, she wants to be the one in charge. I said, well, you've given her what she wanted for the last 2.5 years. You've struggled and you've been emotional and you've had all these problems. And now that you're starting to get happy, what's going on in your relationship? He's like, ooh, she's been weird. And I was like, well, okay, so at least now you know what you're dealing with. and we did some stuff, and it remains to be seen how his relationship is going to work out and how his business life is going to work out. But you start to see these things with people, it starts to make a lot more sense why this stuff is in our heads when we start to sort of dissect it like that.
Wow. When you put it like that, it really helps look at who's talking, who's doing the talking, and who's really the one bringing them down. And it's, often case ourselves.
Well, so much of the time. And the thing is, it's always us in that we have to be willing to let it in for it to affect us. And that's the thing that we often don't get. And so one of the other things that you can do is recognize that people have a lot of projections, expectations, and judgments that they use to, it's just basically how we've learned to live in this reality, unfortunately. So what you can do is every morning, one of the things I suggest that people do is every morning when you get up, just go, okay, so all the projections, expectations, separations, judgments, and rejections that I have in my world at all, I now destroy and uncreate them and just let them go. And if you'll do that every day for everybody's projections, expectations, separations, judgments, and rejections, you start your day with a sense of this space that you don't have otherwise, because people are always trying to project stuff into our worlds about how we're supposed to be and how we're not supposed to be based on their own selfish point of view or their own point of view, not necessarily looking to see the greatness of us show up. Got it.
Big topic here. And if this same guy, this poor guy here, I'm picking on
Session 3.
If he wanted to become more of a leader in his own life and learn to take control of his own decisions and really become a master of his own life, and it looks like you call this the kingdom of me, and I guess I'm just looking for an elaboration and just more context to this.
Yeah, I would actually say that the place that occurs is actually what I would call the kingdom of we, where everyone and everything is included in our choices and our decisions. And so what happens is there's three ways that you can be in the world. And I alluded to it earlier in the relationship thing. But when one is going to become a leader, see, my point of view is a leader is not somebody who has followers. A leader is somebody who knows where they need to go and what needs to be done, and they're willing to do it regardless of whether anybody else comes along or not. Those are the people we see that we admire in the world. I use Richard Branson as a great example because he took what was there and went, we need to go here, and was very successful at doing it. And these are the people that truly create, that truly blaze trails where nobody else has been able to before. So there's a few types of people in the world, obviously, right? But one of them is sort of like the sensitive people, the caring people in the world that are like, man, I just want everything better for everybody. And those are the people that oftentimes have some of the greatest and most creative ideas, but they don't have the willingness to sort of walk over other people to create it, so they think they don't have this capacity. To truly become a leader, my point of view is you want to function from something I call 50-50. And my business partner and I found this actually because at one point I had 49% of the business and he had 51. He was the creator of it, had been doing it for so many years. So when I came along, he actually gave me 49% of the business. And then at one point we realized this is creating some weird stuff where it's not actually a 50-50 thing here. And so we changed that to 50-50, and all of a sudden the business took off. And what we realized was this is what people do in their lives and in their relationships. What they do is they'll make themselves 49% and make somebody else 51%, or they'll make themselves 51%, believing they have to try to be superior, and make other people 49%, which is where you see most leaders or people that are called leaders function from. I'm the leader, do what I say. Somebody who's truly going to be a leader that's going to truly create massive change in the way their business functions, their life functions, is somebody who functions at 50-50, where it's like, hey, yes, I'm the leader, but at the same time, you're not less than me. I'm just willing to express what I know in this way and not doubt myself and know what I know, Not that you don't question, you still question, but you know what you know. And so what I'd suggest people do is look at the places in your life where you're making yourself 49% to other people's 51, or believing you have to make yourself 51% and make other people 49, and ask yourself, if I were to function from 50-50 in this relationship, whatever relationship it is, what would change? And then start choosing from that, and you'll see a totally different possibility.
I like that. A totally different possibility. It just opens up the doors to a whole new world. I don't know if it's just right now, kind of the stage where I'm at, but just being, extremely authentic. And on your path, I'm wondering if you've ever drifted off of your authentic, let's say, kind of like true vision and kind of gone in a different direction. Maybe you were kind of lured by some other opportunities, money, other people. I don't know. Has this ever happened to you on your journey in the last 15 years? And if so, like, how has this impacted you?
I would say, yeah, there are always these things that show up, these bright, shiny things that promise more than what you already have.
Right.
I think we need to recognize that that's probably the lure is there in whatever form it takes, depending on who we are. And for me, it would have been one thing. For somebody else, it would be another. But one of the things that I found that can... And so I've had this, yes. And there are times where I sort of strayed off my own personal course, but not so dynamically that I was off of my track. It just sort of like I seriously bent the limits of my track. So it was like I was on the outer limits. I was just about to fall off the track and was like, no, you know what? This does not feel light to me. Because one of the things, we all have an internal compass of what's actually true for us. And the way I like to put it is, what's true makes you feel lighter. A lie makes you feel heavier. And so what happens is you're heading in the direction of something that's really not where you would like to go, really not sort of part of your path. It starts to get heavier and heavier and heavier. And we know it. And I know a lot of guys out there that that have that with relationships, and there are lots of guys that have that with women or with men, where it's like, oh, that becomes more of an important thing. And if anything were going to derail me, that probably would have been it also. But as I started heading in that direction, what happened was it just got heavier and heavier and heavier. And what a lot of guys have learned to do is, when it gets heavy like that, then you try to defend that you're doing the right thing, because inherently you're doing the wrong thing. And not wrong in the sense of that anything should be wrong, but it's not going to work out in your best interest. So as you notice things starting to get heavier, realize you're heading in the direction of what is not true for you, even if it's true for somebody else. Even if somebody wants to take you on the ride of their life, it's not true for you. So recognize that first. And then the second thing you want to ask when something comes up is this an opportunity or a possibility? Because what happens is, when something is a possibility, it will create more in your life. When it's an opportunity, it's a bright, shiny object that looks like it's going to create something more, but it always leads you back to less than you had before you went in that direction. So is it an opportunity or a possibility? And you'll get the awareness.
I like that. I love just the word possibility. Like, you seem to be using that a lot, and it just kind of creates this open door for something new, a new shift in thinking, a new possibility, a new life is what I'm feeling.
Yeah, and that is, and that's actually why I use the word, because energetically it matches that, and it also invites it into existence. If this is the first time hearing me, you're like, could you stop saying possibility? Like for some people, it's like,
right,
dude, you use the word possibility a lot. I'm like, yeah, I do, but I also see it get created a lot. So I'm willing to use it because I know it's possible to actually create it. That's what I want people to know. I don't want anybody to struggle like I did 15 years ago. And I know people are out there doing that. And I know there are people out there that have more going on than I had going on 15 years ago, and would like them to have the tools to not have to struggle again. Let's make this stuff easy.
I like that. Yeah, that's good. And so, Dr. Dain, I have a section of this podcast called the Knowledge Round. So are you ready for the Knowledge Round?
I will do my best.
Do you feel stuck, alone, or like you're not getting the type of results you think you deserve? You put in all the hard work in your life, relationships, and business, but things just aren't getting any better? I've been there. That's how I started. That's where I was. I kept trying to improve my life, but nothing just seemed to give. I started to think that personal development was a joke. I felt like every month I was in the same place I was the previous month. But then I found something that just worked. I grew, my business grew, my relationships flourished, and everything around me just started to click. People started respecting me more, and I finally felt like I was becoming the man I wanted to be. I created a program to help guys get the same results in their life. Check out kfmline.com to learn how the Lion's Den can radically transform your life. Again, that's kfmline.com. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime.
All right, and so first question we have here, Dain, is what advice would you give to someone who's feeling lost or unsure of their purpose?
Get the sense of what it would be like if you were to have everything in life you desire, but start with getting the sense of what it would be like if the world were the way you desired it to be, and then get the sense, the energy, the space, the way it would feel, if you will, if you had everything in your life change in the way that you would like it to, that you don't think you can currently do. Just get that energy, put it in front of you, and just bask in it for 5 minutes a day. And within a week, you will notice something different.
I like that. And Dain, what was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
All of my judgments of me and everything I bought from everybody else that about the way life was supposed to be and how I was supposed to live it, and everything I bought about everybody else's vision of success and what was possible and how to create it that wasn't actually true.
Right. And on your path, have you had a mentor who's helped you through the ups and downs? Have you had someone who's been there for you, and what impact has this mentor played on your life?
Absolutely. Yeah. And his name is Gary Douglas. He's the founder of Access Consciousness. He's now my business partner and best friend. And the impact he's had on my life, I can't even begin to estimate. Without him and the work that he brought into the world, I would literally be dead. So to say he's had an impact would be just an understatement. He's been a friend, somebody who showed me what was possible when I didn't believe it, and somebody who let me know that all the dreams that I had that I thought were insane because nobody else saw them are actually valid, real, and that it might take a hell of a lot of work, but they could be created.
Yeah, I like that. And so this will probably be a tough question for you here, but what would you say are 2 or 3 of your most influential books, and why?
Oh, goodness, that's a tough question. I'm unlike probably everybody else you've had conversations with. I sort of stopped reading books several years ago because I found that part was true and a lot of it was actually not true. And so, okay. Somebody else's point of view where they're like, hey, do this. And I'm like, you know what? That's where I got to where I wanted to kill myself before because I couldn't do what everybody else said I was supposed to. So there's a book that I recently read called Prosperity Consciousness that truly has opened some doors.
What was that about? Kind of like mindset shift in money?
Yep. Mindset shift in money, and also the recognition that your sense of money and your sense of abundance in that regard is actually related to your sense of abundance and your sense of willingness to receive everything. So it was a cool perspective.
Who's the author of that one? I'm on the computer. I'm like, there's like 5 authors who have the same title.
Yeah. Stephen Chutisa Bowman.
Okay.
And what they actually did was they actually took Access tools and put them in there, and I went, oh, wow, cool. So it's an interesting sort of awareness where that consciousness of prosperity comes from. And another book, let me ponder that for just a moment. I'm going to be a very bad interview guest here, but I don't even have another one that I can think of right now.
You know what? I'm interested in actually why you don't read books. Earlier you said like, hey, I'm not reading as much as I used to. Well, like that's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because now when I read, like fantasy or something, it's like, and when I say fantasy, I mean like, sword and sorcery sort of thing. Because what happened was, when I got this awareness that what's true makes you feel lighter and a lie makes you feel heavier, I went back and I was somebody who was literally reading 5 books, usually all at the same time, and I'd go from one to the other because I get bored really easily, and got a wonderful case of ADHD that just sort of propels me into all kinds of weird things all at the same time. And what happened was I started looking and literally dissecting certain sentences and paragraphs. And I would just sit there with it and go, okay, does that make me feel lighter? In other words, is that true for me? And what I would notice with what most people were writing, there would be one part that was true. I'm like, yes, cool, this is awesome. And the very next sentence would be a total conclusion that they had come to based on something that was true. And then that wasn't true for me. And I noticed when I would read books like that at least half of what they were saying made me feel heavier. So I'd leave the book rather than with the sense of possibility and lightness and yay, I can go do something greater. I was like, well, I know I should be able to, but I feel kind of stuck at the same time. And when that started being the case with almost every book I was reading at the time, I went, you know what, I'm going to take some time off here. And I'm only going to read the books that really call to me, that say, hey, you need to read me now. Like when it falls off the shelf and hits you in the face, or somebody talks about it and you're sort of inspired to head in that direction. Those are the only books I read now. And because I found that when people put their conclusions down to paper, it doesn't create more for me personally. And so if it's not going to create more, I've got way too much going on to do something in my life that doesn't actually create more.
Yeah.
I know it's weird, but
No. I mean, I am a big reader. I have changed the way that I read. Like I read maybe a book a week or so, and it is a lot. It is getting to a point where it is a lot, but I've just kind of changed the way that I do read. I don't read every word. I'm not like just, I don't take everything he says and I'm like, oh, this is the way to happiness. Like I just, I use my own consciousness and just, take, it's kind of like that Bruce Lee quote, like just take what is useful and discard the rest. I'm just looking for that 1 or 2, maybe 3 things from that one book to just add into my inventory.
Right. Yeah, and I totally get that, and I think that's a brilliant way to do it. And I just got to a point where I was so frustrated, and I was like, I'm going to do this differently. And so I do it differently also, and I think that's a great way of, hey, I'll take the gravy and leave the rest, take the frosting and then leave the rest.
Right. Okay. And so this next question here is more of a scenario for you, Dain. And so imagine you had 60 seconds with your 20-year-old self. What would you tell him to do and what would you tell him not to do?
I'd say, okay, my friend, here's the deal. 98% of the crap in your head isn't yours. Starting today, you ask, who does this belong to for every limited point of view you have? Number 2, you're going to start asking, how does it get any better than this for everything good and everything bad that happens? And number 3, I want you to know that there will be the tools to create the world and the reality you desire. They just haven't shown up yet in your world, but they will. Please know they're there. Head in that direction. Never stop, never quit, and never give in.
I like that. Just soaking that in. I like that a lot. That's really good. And reflecting back now on, let's say, where you were 15 years ago to where you are now and kind of those lessons, and there's just so much knowledge and abundance that has been created in that time span. What would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
Anything is possible. And that the greatest success comes from when you follow what truly speaks to you and birth that into existence. And that doesn't necessarily mean money. I know people who do one thing for money and do another thing because it makes their heart sing. And, excuse me. So my point of view is what you do, the old adage, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Try to find that. And if you can't, do what you need to do to create the money you desire, and do it in a way that's honoring of you, in a way that's honoring of other people. And then recognize that you still need to add this element of what it is that's nurturing to you, what it is that's exciting to you, what it is that's fun to you. Because if you don't have that in your life, all the money in the world is absolutely irrelevant.
I like that. Really good. Really good. And so that's going to conclude the knowledge round there. Dain, let's go into what you're really excited to create in the future. Like what kind of projects, what kind of things are you working on now?
There are quite a few at this point. A few things. There is actually a land project down in Costa Rica. There's a place that we call El Lugar, which means the place. It's based on a novel that my business partner wrote, and where it actually describes a somewhat magical land, if you will, that we are looking to fund and create a place for sustainable agriculture, but a place that is also healing. The land itself, riding a horse or walking across the land, it's like it feels healing, kind of like Lourdes in France. It's got this amazing energy to it, and it's untouched, it's unspoiled, and we would like to actually, I say we because there's a lot of us involved in the project, actually fund that and create a place where people can come and stay and be nurtured by the land, but also create the awareness that it's our job to become stewards of this planet if we're going to have a planet that sustains life for as long as we would like it to. That's one. And also to teach people to actually recognize there's an earth under our feet. Let's actually get connected with it because it will contribute if we ask. That's one. The other one is actually creating apps so that people have some easy access to this right on their favorite device, which, is usually attached to most people's hands or heads at this point all the time. And then the other thing is we're doing 2 documentaries. One is based on the Access Consciousness bars, this process that I had that literally saved my life 15 years ago. And we had a neuroscientist study somebody that had their bars run, and he said, and he did this presentation in front of this group of people at a conference, and he said, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've got to tell you, I've never seen anything that does this, let alone in an hour and 15 minutes. He said the level of phase and coherence that this creates in an hour and 15 minutes, you don't see this in people who've meditated for years. So this process creates that level of change. So we're actually funding a study so that we can get a large enough group of people to have a double-blind study showing what this does, so that we sort of have the scientific proof for what we've known for 25 years happens. So that's just a couple of the things that are going on right now.
That sounds really exciting. A lot of stuff going on, just keeping you busy and creating change. You're not selling sugar water, you're selling, changing someone's life and helping them see a whole new reality. So it's incredible the work that you're doing. Go ahead and give yourself a plug on how the audience can connect with you.
You can reach me at drdainheer.com, which is DrDainheer.com. And on there's lots of free stuff, lots of giveaways. Like there's lots of videos and there's a video series called the Being You video series there it's basically got the top 10 things that I did to change my life 15 years ago that will apply to any situation in your life. It's my gift. And, I want people to have these tools. What was missing for me was the tools. So, and then also if you go to, it's drdainheer.com. And also the last book that I wrote is called Being You, Changing the World. And there's an audio of that if you sign up for that video series. It's a 55-minute audio, but people have sent me emails. I have literally hundreds of emails of people saying, I've listened to this audio and I listen to it when I don't know what to do, and I always get lighter after I hear it. I don't know what magic you put in there or what voodoo, but it friggin' works. So those things are available there. And I've got, on my YouTube channel, I've got something like 100 videos of different real simple tools that you can use to start changing things.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and 1 million downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we've just started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a review in iTunes. It really helps to grow the podcast. Guys, 2015 is the official year of living with purpose, where every day you do only the things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. Check out kfmfree.com to get free tools I've created to help you crush life. Again, that's kfmfree.com. This is your host, Andrew Fairby, and I'll see you in the next episode.